Sylvia Campbell was focused on the deliberate rhythm of her boots crunching pine needles, trying to immerse herself in the deep woods, a cherished weekly ritual of healing with her daughter, Rosie. But Rosie suddenly planted her feet and broke the silence. "Mom, stop, please." Sylvia turned, a sigh catching in her throat, tired from a long week of shifts. "What is it, sweetheart? We're nowhere near the stream yet." Rosie's head tilted, her focus intense. "I smell cold, wet earth, Mom. And it's wrong." Sylvia hesitated. Rosie had always been unnervingly perceptive, but this area was dense, dark forest. Against her better judgment, Sylvia allowed Rosie to lead them off the trail, pushing through thick undergrowth and snapping branches. Then Sylvia saw it. A slight, telltale mound of disturbed soil in a secluded spot, too small to be a proper grave, too fresh to be natural. A knot of dread formed in her stomach. Then she heard it, a faint, shallow, labored breathing coming from under the dirt. Sylvia's nurse's oath instantly shredded her mother's caution. She dropped her bag, fell to her knees and began digging frantically with her bare hands, recognizing that someone was buried alive. Her frantic efforts uncovered an expensive, dirt-caked watch, followed by the bruised, desperate face of a man, Lucien Volkov. His eyes fixed on her, raw relief warring with terror. "Hurry, they'll be back," he rasped, his voice barely audible. The sight of the man and the realization of his deadly predicament was the inciting incident, forcing her to use every ounce of her professional skill in the most dangerous situation imaginable. Sylvia's hands moved with practiced efficiency, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She cleared the dirt from Lucien's nose and mouth first, establishing an airway, then assessed his injuries with rapid clinical precision. Broken ribs, probable internal bleeding, severe contusions across his torso, and what looked like a bullet graze along his left shoulder. This man had been systematically beaten before being buried. "Rosie, run back to the cabin. Get my medical bag from the hall closet, the large gray one. Move fast, sweetheart." Rosie hesitated only a second before sprinting through the trees, her small frame disappearing into the shadows. Sylvia continued excavating Lucien's body, talking to him constantly to keep him conscious. "Stay with me. What's your name? Can you feel your legs?" "Lucien," he managed, coughing up dirt. "Volkov. My legs, yes. Ribs, broken." His accent was faint but distinct, Eastern European. The expensive suit beneath the dirt, the Patek Philippe watch, and the calculated brutality of his injuries. This wasn't a random assault. This was execution, interrupted only by her intervention. Rosie returned within minutes, her face pale but determined. Together they maneuvered Lucien onto an improvised stretcher using Sylvia's jacket and 2 fallen branches. The cabin was only a quarter-mile away, but every step felt eternal. Lucien faded in and out of consciousness, his breathing becoming increasingly labored. Inside the cabin, Sylvia transformed her small living room into an emergency trauma bay. She'd stocked supplies over the years. Habits from her urgent care training died hard. IV fluids, antibiotics, surgical tools sterilized and ready. She cut away Lucien's ruined clothing, revealing the full extent of the damage. Someone had worked him over professionally, knowing exactly how to inflict maximum pain without immediate death. "Rosie, I need you to be brave. Go to your room, put on your headphones, and don't come out until I call you. Can you do that?" Rosie nodded solemnly, squeezing her mother's hand once before retreating upstairs.
Sylvia heard the soft click of the bedroom door and immediately focused on the man bleeding across her grandmother's couch.
She worked for 3 hours straight. The bullet graze was superficial, but 2 ribs had punctured tissue, causing internal bleeding that required careful drainage. She established IV access, administered broad-spectrum antibiotics, and carefully sutured the deepest lacerations. Her hands never trembled, her focus absolute. This was what she did. She fixed broken things. She pulled people back from the edge. When Lucien finally opened his eyes fully, dawnlight was filtering through the cabin windows. His gaze was sharp despite the pain, assessing her with an intensity that made Sylvia acutely aware she'd just saved a very dangerous man. "You're a surgeon," he said, his voice stronger now. "Urgent care nurse, but I've seen enough trauma." She checked his vitals again, satisfied with the numbers. "You were buried alive. Someone wanted you dead but didn't want to use a gun. Who are you, really?" Lucien's laugh was bitter, cut short by pain. "I'm the head of the Volkov organization, a mafia boss if you prefer simple terms. And the man who buried me was my consigliere, my most trusted advisor. He sold me to the Balkan Mafia, Clan Shehu, for territory rights and a bullet I'll never forget." Sylvia's blood went cold. She'd just brought a mob boss into her home, the sanctuary she'd built for herself and Rosie after her ex-fiancé's betrayal had shattered her trust in people. "You need to leave. As soon as you can walk, you need to get out of here." "I will." Lucien's eyes held something she didn't expect, genuine regret. "But you need to understand something. By saving me, you've marked yourself. The Balkans are thorough. They'll trace my movements, find this location, and they'll assume you're affiliated with me. You and your daughter are now targets."
Sylvia wanted to call him a liar, wanted to believe her quiet life in the woods was too obscure to matter. But she'd spent years reading people in emergency situations, and Lucien's warning carried the weight of absolute certainty. "How long do we have?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the terror building in her chest. "Hours, maybe less. I was taken 2 days ago. They'll have been monitoring the area." As if to confirm his words, Lucien's phone, which Sylvia had retrieved from his jacket, buzzed with an encrypted message. He read it, his expression darkening. "My captain, Dante, has been searching. He just confirmed Balkan scouts were spotted in the nearest town asking about medical professionals." Sylvia's mind raced through options, each one collapsing under scrutiny. The police couldn't protect them from an international crime syndicate. Her family lived states away. Running blindly would make them easier targets. She looked at Rosie's closed bedroom door, thinking of her daughter's resilient spirit, her perceptive nature, the life she deserved, safe, stable, predictable. "What are you proposing?" "My mountain fortress, the Citadel. It's 3 hours north, completely secure, defended by men who've been with me for decades. You'll have your own wing, medical facilities, anything you need, and I'll ensure the Balkan threat is neutralized permanently." Lucien shifted, wincing. "I don't ask lightly, but your daughter's safety depends on making the right choice in the next 5 minutes." Sylvia called her clinic director, her voice professionally calm as she explained a family emergency requiring immediate leave. She packed essentials for herself and Rosie in 2 bags, her movements mechanical. Within the hour, an armored SUV arrived, driven by a granite-faced man who introduced himself as Dante.
Rosie took everything in with wide eyes, her small hand gripping Sylvia's tightly as they drove north into increasingly remote mountain territory. Lucian, despite his injuries, maintained constant communication with his security team, coordinating his protection with military precision. Sylvia watched him work, recognizing the same focused intensity she brought to trauma cases, except his expertise was in staying alive through calculated violence. "Mom, is he a bad man?" Rosie whispered, as they wound up a narrow mountain road. Sylvia looked at Lucian, this stranger she'd pulled from death, who'd just upended their entire existence. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but right now, he's the only one who can keep us safe."
The fortress emerged from the mountainside like something from another era. Stone walls, strategic positioning, surveillance technology hidden among ancient architecture. Sylvia had expected something cold and institutional, but the citadel was surprisingly beautiful, blending modern security with old-world craftsmanship. Rosie's apprehension softened slightly as they were shown to a spacious suite with mountain views and a library filled with children's books. Lucian had been taken directly to a medical wing. Apparently, Sylvia wasn't the first to notice his organization needed proper trauma care. She settled Rosie with drawing supplies, and then, unable to resist her professional instincts, went to check on her patient. She found him arguing with his doctor, a competent but clearly overwhelmed young woman named Elena. "Mr. Wolkoff, you need at least 2 weeks of bed rest for those ribs. I need to coordinate our defense, which requires being conscious and mobile." Lucian caught sight of Sylvia in the doorway. "Perhaps my savior can explain the concept of medical necessity." Sylvia crossed her arms. "Lie down before you tear your sutures. Elena, show me his chart." She reviewed the post-op notes, then fixed Lucian with the same look that made unruly patients comply. "You have a punctured lung that I drained. If you rupture it again through stupidity, you'll drown in your own blood. Is that clear enough?" Something shifted in Lucian's expression. Respect, perhaps, or amusement. He lay back without further protest. Over the next hour, Sylvia worked with Elena to optimize his pain management and recovery protocol, falling into the comfortable rhythm of medical problem-solving. Later, as Sylvia prepared dinner in their suite's kitchen, Rosie appeared at her side. "Mom, I asked Mr. Wolkoff if he's a good man or a bad man." Sylvia's hands stilled over the cutting board. "What did he say?" "He said the world isn't that simple. He said he protects his people, and sometimes that means doing things that look bad to protect something good. He said I should decide for myself." Rosie paused. I think he's trying to be good. He's just really bad at it sometimes." Sylvia pulled her daughter close, marveling at her wisdom. Outside, night fell over the mountains, and armed guards patrolled the perimeter. This was their life now, at least until the threat was eliminated. She just had to figure out if the man she'd saved was their protector, or another danger entirely.
Morning brought Dante with intelligence reports and coffee. Sylvia found herself included in the security briefing, Lucian apparently having decided that information was better than false comfort. The traitor had been identified. Viktor Romanov, Lucian's consigliere of 15 years, who'd sold detailed security protocols to the Balkans in exchange for control of Volkov's shipping operations. "Viktor was like my brother," Lucian said quietly, studying surveillance photos. "I trusted him with everything, and he sold me for territory and pride.
If you can't stand people who betray the ones who trust them most, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Type, "Nobody deserves that." Because what happened next only got worse. Sylvia watched Lucian's face, seeing past the controlled fury for something more painful: grief. She understood betrayal intimately. Her ex-fiancé had been a fellow medical professional, someone she'd planned a future with, until she discovered him systematically stealing medication for profit. The betrayal had shattered her faith in people, driven her to isolation. "What will you do?" she asked. "What I must. Victor will face consequences." Lucian's tone was final, but then he surprised her. "However, I've been thinking about what your daughter said, about trying to be good. The Balkans expect me to respond with immediate, brutal retaliation, burning their operations, killing their lieutenants. That's the language they understand." "But," Sylvia prompted, "but perhaps there's strategic value in measured response. Victor gave them my security protocols. I can use that, feed false information, make them believe they have advantages they don't." He looked at Sylvia directly. "I'm not becoming soft, but I've been given an unexpected second chance at life. Perhaps that means reconsidering methods I've always assumed were necessary."
Over the following days, Sylvia observed Lucian's organization with clinical detachment that gradually eroded into reluctant understanding. She witnessed his fierce loyalty to his people, the university tuition he paid for his guards' children, the anonymous donations to community clinics. Dante revealed, almost casually, that Lucian had funded the entire trauma wing renovation at Sylvia's urgent care facility 2 years ago. "Why?" she confronted him one evening as she changed his dressings. "Because good trauma care saves lives, and despite what you think of me, I prefer fewer deaths, not more." He winced as she probed the healing tissue. "Most of my business is legitimate: shipping, import, real estate. The criminal elements exist as protection, as leverage in a world where law is often inadequate." "That's rationalization," Sylvia countered. "Perhaps, but show me someone who operates in absolute moral clarity, and I'll show you someone who's never faced impossible choices." Lucian caught her wrist gently. "You saved my life knowing I was dangerous. You brought me to your home, risking everything. Why?" Sylvia pulled away, unsettled. "Because I'm a nurse. It's what I do." "No, you're someone who sees broken things and needs to fix them. We're not that different, Sylvia. We just use different tools."
3 weeks into their stay at the Citadel, Sylvia established a routine that gave Rosie some semblance of normalcy. Online school in the mornings, time in the extensive library, and carefully supervised outdoor time in the secured courtyard. Sylvia herself found purpose training Elena and the other medical staff, upgrading their trauma protocols and equipment. She also found herself drawn to Lucian in ways that both attracted and disturbed her. He was brilliant, educated, surprisingly well-read. Their evening conversations ranged from philosophy to medical ethics to the complexity of loyalty. He treated Rosie with gentle respect, never condescending, always honest within appropriate bounds. But the attraction came with guilt. This was a man who'd ordered deaths, who operated outside law, who represented everything her carefully controlled life had avoided. Yet when his hand brushed hers reaching for the same book, or when she caught him watching her with unguarded warmth, something in her responded despite every logical argument against it. The equilibrium shattered on a Tuesday night. Alarms blared through the Citadel at 2 a.m.
Dante burst into their suite, weapon drawn. Balkan team penetrated the outer perimeter. 4 hostiles, heavily armed. Lockdown protocol now. Sylvia grabbed Rosie, following Dante to a reinforced panic room deep in the fortress. Through security monitors, she watched the firefight unfold, Lucien's men responding with professional precision, but the attackers were skilled, determined. 2 of Lucien's guards went down before the hostiles were neutralized. Lucien himself, still recovering, coordinated from the command center, his voice steady as he directed his forces. She watched him transform from the contemplative man she'd been speaking with into something harder, colder, the Mafia boss who'd survived decades in a brutal world. When the all-clear sounded an hour later, Sylvia insisted on treating the wounded guards personally. The injuries were serious but manageable, and she worked with fierce concentration, refusing to acknowledge the trembling in her hands until after both men were stabilized. Lucien found her afterward, sitting alone in the medical bay. "You saved them. Both would have bled out waiting for transport." "This is my fault," Sylvia said quietly. "If I'd left you there, walked away, then I'd be dead, and the Balkans would still be a threat to someone else, somewhere else. You made the right choice." He sat beside her, careful of his still healing ribs. "But this isn't the life you chose. If you want to leave, I'll arrange maximum security protection until when? Until you've killed enough of them that they give up?" Sylvia's frustration boiled over. "I'm tired of being helpless, tired of hiding while other people fight. If I'm going to be here, I need agency, not protection."
The probing attack proved to be reconnaissance for something larger. Intelligence gathered from captured equipment revealed the Balkans were planning a coordinated assault within the week. Lucien doubled security, brought in additional forces, and transformed the citadel into a fortress prepared for siege. Sylvia threw herself into preparation, working 18-hour days, organizing the medical bay for mass casualties, training everyone with basic first aid, stockpiling supplies. If she stayed busy enough, she couldn't think about the danger closing in, couldn't examine her complicated feelings about Lucien, couldn't wonder what kind of mother put her daughter in this situation. Rosie, meanwhile, showed remarkable resilience. She'd befriended several guards' children staying in the secure family wing, and Lucien had given her a special watch, not expensive, but equipped with an emergency beacon she could trigger if separated. She wore it constantly, touchstone against fear. The attack came on a Friday evening, just as dusk settled over the mountains. 20 Balkan operatives, coordinated assault on 3 fronts, using the intelligence Victor had sold them to target perceived weaknesses in the citadel's defenses. Sylvia and Rosie were rushed to the deep bunker, a reinforced underground shelter designed to survive anything short of direct military bombardment. Banks of monitors showed the battle unfolding above, and Sylvia watched with horrified fascination as Lucien's preparation proved decisive. The defenses held, the attackers were systematically repelled, but not without cost. 4 more guards were wounded, 1 critically. Rosie sat beside her, watching the screens with solemn understanding beyond her years. "Mr. Volkov is protecting us," she said simply, "like you protected him." The battle lasted 3 hours. When Dante finally escorted them back upstairs, Sylvia immediately went to the medical wing where the wounded awaited. The critical case was a young man named Marco, barely 20, with a severed femoral artery.
She operated for 2 hours with Elena assisting, refusing to let another person die while she had the skills to prevent it. Lucian found her afterward, exhausted and covered in blood that wasn't hers. You saved him. This time. But next time. The time after that? I can't keep watching people die because of choices I made. Then make different choices. Help me end this in a way that doesn't require more bloodshed. Lucian's expression was intense. You see the world differently than I do. Use that. Show me the surgical strike instead of the brutal assault. The next morning, Sylvia confronted Lucian in his office with a proposal that surprised even herself. I want full access to intelligence briefings. I want to understand the Balkan organization, structure, leadership, vulnerabilities, and I want to train your men in advanced trauma care so they're not helpless when I'm not available. If you believe knowledge and preparation matter more than just violence, hit that subscribe button. People like the Balkans won't, and you need to hear what she did about it. Lucian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Granted. But understand, once you're part of operational planning, you can't unsee what you'll learn. You'll know exactly what we're capable of. I already know. I pulled you out of a grave. Sylvia met his gaze steadily. Now show me how to make sure my daughter never sees one. Over the following week, Sylvia immersed herself in Lucian's world with the same intensity she'd brought to medical school. She studied the Balkan Mafia's structure, identifying key figures, particularly their leader, Rock Shehu, a brutal man who'd built power through calculated violence and strategic political corruption. She also trained Lucian's security team in trauma care, teaching them hemorrhage control, airway management, tactical combat casualty care. The men who'd initially been skeptical of the nurse playing soldier quickly recognized her expertise. She wasn't trying to be one of them. She was giving them tools to survive. Her relationship with Lucian deepened into something neither could define easily. They spent long evenings reviewing intelligence, debating strategy, challenging each other's assumptions. He valued her perspective precisely because it was different from his usual advisors. She began seeing past the Mafia boss to the man who'd survived betrayal, who carried the weight of loyalty and protection, who was trying to be good despite a world that punished goodness. Rosie thrived in the strange new normal, though Sylvia caught her daughter watching the guards with too much understanding, learning lessons about danger and trust that no child should need. It hardened her resolve. This threat needed to end decisively, permanently. The breaking point came when Dante burst into a strategy session with new intelligence, his face ashen. We intercepted communications. Rock Shehu has abandoned direct assault. He's planning to kidnap Rosie, use her as leverage to draw Lucian out and force territorial concessions. The room went silent. Sylvia felt ice flood her veins, every nightmare scenario materializing simultaneously. Lucian's reaction was immediate and absolute. We go underground, full dispersal protocol. Sylvia and Rosie to the safe house in... No. Sylvia's voice cut through his planning like a scalpel. Running makes us vulnerable. Hiding makes us victims. We end this now.
Sylvia stood at the tactical planning table surrounded by Lucian's top commanders and laid out her proposal with clinical precision. Rock Shehu has built power through 3 pillars: criminal revenue, political protection, and fear. You've been thinking about attacking the first pillar with traditional methods, destroying his operations, killing his lieutenants. That's expected. That's what he's prepared for. She pulled up intelligence files on the screens. But look at the second pillar. He's bought politicians, judges, police chiefs throughout the Balkans. Those relationships are documented. We have evidence of bribes, blackmail, illegal arrangements. What if we don't attack him directly? What if we systematically expose his corruption to the very systems he's corrupted? Dante frowned. Legal action? These people don't care about law. They care about prison and asset forfeiture. They care when their bank accounts are frozen and their protection evaporates. Sylvia's mind worked through the strategy like a complex surgery. Rock has enemies, rival organizations, ambitious prosecutors looking for career-making cases, international law enforcement tired of Balkan trafficking. We feed them everything simultaneously. His political allies will abandon him to save themselves. His criminal partners will turn on him when their money is at risk. Lucian leaned forward, his expression intent. You're proposing we destroy him without firing a shot. I'm proposing we use precision instead of brutality, surgery instead of amputation. Sylvia met his eyes. You said I see the world differently. This is how. I identify the infection and cut it out at the source, leaving healthy tissue intact. The plan took shape over 3 intense days of preparation. Lucian's organization had accumulated extensive intelligence on Balkan operations, financial records, communications, documentation of human trafficking and illegal weapons deals. They also had Victor, the traitor, now held in secure detention with information he could trade. Sylvia coordinated with Elena to ensure everything was documented with medical precision, chain of custody, verification protocols, redundant backup systems. They reached out through careful intermediaries to Interpol agents who'd been investigating the Balkans, to Balkan prosecutors frustrated by corruption, to rival organizations happy to see Rock's power crumble. "Mom, why do you look different?" Rosie asked one evening, studying Sylvia with her characteristic perceptiveness.
Different how, sweetheart? Like you used to look at the hospital, like you're fixing something. Rosie considered. Are you fixing the bad man? Sylvia pulled her daughter close. I'm trying to make sure the bad men can't hurt us anymore. Not with violence, but with truth. The execution of the plan was coordinated across multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. Early on a Monday morning, Interpol raided Balkan financial institutions, seizing accounts based on evidence of money laundering and trafficking proceeds. Simultaneously, prosecutors in 3 countries announced indictments against key Balkan figures, including Rock Shehu, with documentation that was impossible to deny. Comment truth over violence if you're Team Sylvia. The Balkans' brutality can't win. Now watch what happens when she finally fights back. Political figures who'd accepted Balkan bribes suddenly faced their own investigations, and without the Balkans' financial protection, they turned on each other with predictable desperation. Rival criminal organizations, sensing weakness, moved on Balkan territory with swift efficiency. Within 72 hours, Rock Shehu was arrested by Balkan authorities who could no longer ignore overwhelming evidence. His organization fractured as lieutenants fled or fought each other for remaining scraps. The threat that seemed insurmountable collapsed under the weight of its own corruption, exposed and dismantled. Sylvia watched the news reports with Lucian, feeling strange satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. He'll face trial, real consequences. More than that, he'll live. The surviving Balkan factions will remember that mercy. Lucian's voice was thoughtful. You showed me a different kind of power, one I'd forgotten existed.
The weeks following Rock's arrest brought an unexpected sense of peace to the Citadel. Threats remained. Lucian's world would always contain danger, but the immediate existential fear lifted. Sylvia found herself facing the question she'd been avoiding. What now? She could return to her old life, resume her position at the urgent care clinic, retreat to the quiet isolation she'd built. The idea felt hollow, like trying to wear clothes that no longer fit. She'd changed too fundamentally, discovered capacities within herself she'd never acknowledged, found purpose in the intersection of healing and strategy. Rosie provided unexpected clarity one evening. "Mom, are we going home?" "Would you want to?" Sylvia asked carefully. Rosie considered with characteristic seriousness. The cabin was quiet, but it was lonely too. Here there are people, friends. Mr. Volkov reads me stories sometimes, and Dante's teaching me chess, and Elena says I can help in the medical bay when I'm older. She paused. Here feels like we're part of something, not just hiding. Sylvia realized her daughter had articulated what she'd been feeling. Isolation had been her response to betrayal. Remove herself from the possibility of being hurt. But that wasn't healing. It was just a different kind of wound. Here, despite the danger, she'd found community, purpose, the sense of building something meaningful. She found Lucian in his study, reviewing security reports. He looked up as she entered, something cautious in his expression. "I've arranged a safe house in Montana, remote, secure, completely off-grid. You could rebuild your quiet life there, with protection, but distance from... I'm staying." The words emerged with surprising certainty. "But on my terms." "Which are?" "I want to establish a proper medical facility here, not just an emergency bay, but a comprehensive clinic that serves your people and the local mountain communities. Legal, licensed, legitimate." Sylvia laid out the proposal she'd been developing. "I want Rosie in the best school available, boarding if necessary, but I want her protected and educated. And I want to be consulted on strategic decisions, especially ones involving risk to civilians."
You want partnership, not protection. Lucian's expression was unreadable. I want agency. I want to build something rather than just survive. Sylvia met his gaze steadily. I pulled you out of death because it's what I do. I fix broken things. But I've realized I'm tired of just patching wounds. I want to prevent them. Lucian stood, crossing to where she stood. I've spent 20 years building an organization through control and calculated violence. You walked into my life and showed me different possibilities in a matter of weeks. You're dangerous, Sylvia Campbell. Far more dangerous than any rival syndicate. Is that a yes? She asked, allowing herself a slight smile. That's a recognition that you've already transformed everything. His hand found hers, the gesture careful, questioning. I told you once that protecting you and Rosie changed my operational priority. That was underselling it. You changed my fundamental approach to power, made me remember that strength and brutality aren't synonymous. Over the following months, Sylvia's vision took shape. She resigned from her urgent care position officially, then established the Citadel Medical Center,
a state-of-the-art facility that treated both Lucian's organization and provided free care to remote mountain communities who otherwise had no access to healthcare. Elena became her partner, and together they trained a new generation of medical professionals in both conventional and tactical trauma care. Rosie enrolled in an elite academy with discreet security, where she thrived academically while maintaining connections to the Citadel. She still wore Lucian's watch, though now it symbolized belonging rather than emergency protocol. Sylvia's relationship with Lucian evolved into something neither had anticipated: partnership that transcended simple categories. He brought her into strategic planning, valuing her perspective on minimizing harm while maintaining security. She helped him navigate the transformation of his organization, steering operations toward legitimate business while maintaining necessary protections. They stood together one evening on the Citadel's walls, watching sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson. In the valley below, lights flickered from communities that now had access to healthcare because of Sylvia's clinic. Inside the fortress, guards trained in trauma protocols that would save lives. Rosie was doing homework in the library, occasionally interrupted by Dante teaching her chess strategy that applied equally to life.
"I saved your life in those woods," Sylvia said quietly, "but somehow you saved mine too, gave me back something I'd lost, the belief that I could be more than just careful and controlled." Lucian's arms settled around her shoulders, warm and solid. "You pulled me from a grave and gave me a second chance to be better than I was, to build protection that doesn't require constant brutality. That's not salvation, Sylvia. That's transformation." She leaned into him, feeling the solid reality of this strange, complicated life they'd built. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Rosie and I had taken a different path that day, if we had missed you by minutes?" "Every day. And every day I'm grateful for a perceptive child who smelled wrong earth and a stubborn nurse who couldn't walk away from someone broken." He turned to face her fully, his expression open in ways it had never been that first desperate morning. "You taught me that saving a life isn't just about preventing death. It's about giving reason to keep living. Thank you." If you watched or listened up to this point, comment the country you are watching this from. Represent your country. The mountains held their secrets well. A mafia boss buried and reborn. A nurse who became a strategist. A child who understood that good and bad weren't simple categories. The Citadel stood strong against the gathering darkness. But now it was more than just a fortress. It was a home, built on the foundation of an impossible rescue and the recognition that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is save a life, because that life might just save you back.